Welcome to Buried Whisper. This is not just another channel. Here, every story you hear has lived in silence for years, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. The highways you drive, the houses you pass, the neighbors you trust, all hide secrets darker than you could ever imagine. Every night we open the door to those shadows. We bring you tales of real encounters, haunted roads, restless spirits, and people whose lives were touched by something they can never forget. Many will watch these stories and feel the chill, but walk away. Only a few choose to stay, if you want to keep wandering deeper into the dark with us. If you're ready to face the whispers that most people ignore, then subscribe now and join us, because once you step into the dark, there is no turning back. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. I keep the lights on, I keep the TV humming just to drown out the silence. But every time the room goes still, I swear I hear it again. Those voices, low and endless, like they followed me back from that goddamn town. I thought the warnings were just tourist superstition, something the park rangers made up to keep people respectful. But Bodie isn't just a ghost town. It's a place that doesn't want to be forgotten. And if you go there long enough, if you stay after dark, it doesn't let you leave whole. I grew up in Sacramento, California, and road trips were kind of my thing. I'd take my camera, load up on gas station snacks, and chase places that felt older than the map. In late July last year, the heat was brutal. The kind of dry heat that makes your shirt stick to your back the moment you step outside. My friend Jason had just gotten back from Arizona, and when I told him about Bodie, he grinned like a kid. "You're talking about the mining town, right? The cursed one?" "That's the one." Jason was always up for stupid shit. He'd drag me into abandoned houses, storm drains, even old barns where people swore kids had hung themselves. He was lanky, smoked too much, and had this laugh that came out in short bursts like he was choking on it. I trusted him, though. If things ever got bad, Jason was the type who'd run toward trouble, not away. We planned it simple. Drive up Highway 395, cut through the dusty back roads near Bridgeport, and hit Bodie before sundown. Spend a couple of hours walking the streets, taking photos, then crash at a motel in Lee Vining. That was the plan. The drive itself was beautiful. Endless stretches of brown hills, ghostly sagebrush rolling in the hot wind, the Sierra Nevadas looming like jagged teeth in the distance. Jason kept fiddling with the radio, trying to find anything besides static, until he gave up and started telling me about some urban explorer on YouTube who went to Bodie and swore he came back cursed. They say if you take anything, even a rock, the spirits make your life hell. Like real bad luck. Divorce, accidents, disease. People actually mail shit back to the ranger station with apology letters. I laughed it off, but I'll admit something. I already felt uneasy before we even saw the first rusted sign. Like we were driving into a place that had been waiting for us. The town appeared suddenly like it had been carved into the hills. Broken down buildings leaning against each other. Weathered planks gone silver with age. Windows so dirty they looked painted shut. The air smelled dry, metallic, almost like burnt matches. There were maybe 10 cars in the dirt parking lot, families with kids wandering around, cameras clicking. It looked harmless. We walked the streets, peeking into old shops, a schoolhouse, the Methodist church with its crooked steeple. The silence was heavy, even with tourists around. No birds, no insects, nothing but the crunch of shoes on gravel. I tried to shake it off. The first strange thing happened in the Miller house. It's one of those preserved interiors where they've left furniture behind. An iron bed frame, a cracked mirror, some clothes yellowed with age. Jason leaned over the rope line, squinting through the dust. "Did you hear that?" I thought he was messing with me. But then I heard it too. A shuffle, faint like someone moving in the back rooms. Nobody else was nearby. Jason grinned, whispering, "Told you." I wanted to leave then, but he pushed further. He always did. By the time the sun dipped, most of the families were gone. The parking lot thinned out. The ranger with a clipboard did a slow walk through the street, probably making sure tourists hadn't pocketed souvenirs. Jason nudged me. "Let's stay a little longer, just till it's dark." I should have said no. Every sign in my gut screamed at me, but I nodded because I didn't want to look scared. We ducked behind one of the buildings, crouched low until the ranger's truck drove off down the dirt road. The town was ours. That's when it changed. The air grew colder, fast. The wind came alive, whispering through cracks in the wood. Shadows stretched across the dirt like they weren't tied to anything real. I tried to laugh it off, but my throat was dry. Jason pulled out his phone, recording. Man, this is gold. Actual haunted body at night. We wandered to the old saloon. Its double doors were barely hanging, creaking in the wind. Inside, the smell hit first. Stale, damp wood and something faintly rotten like old meat left too long in the sun. Tables were still set with bottles covered in dust. A piano sagged against the far wall, half its keys missing. I froze because I swear I heard it. A single note plink from the piano. Jason's eyes widened. You heard that, right? We didn't talk much after that. We just listened. The whispers started low, carried on the wind. At first I thought it was just air whistling through the cracks, but it formed words, broken, guttural, like dozens of voices at once, all speaking under their breath. My skin crawled. We stumbled outside, and that's when the real nightmare started. Across the street by the church stood a figure. Too still, too dark. Its edges blending with the wood behind it. It wasn't moving, wasn't walking, just watching. Jason whispered, "Don't look directly at it." But I did. I wish I hadn't. Its face wasn't a face, not exactly. It was like the air bent wrong, like a smudge on reality itself. And when I blinked, there were more. Standing in doorways, leaning against walls, filling the windows of houses we just passed. Jason grabbed my arm hard. We need to go now. We ran, boots kicking up dust, every direction feeling wrong. The streets twisted, longer than they'd been in daylight. The town stretched, swallowing us. And all the while, the whispers followed. Louder now, clearer, overlapping voices. Some begged, some cursed, some laughed in jagged bursts that made my teeth ache. We found the parking lot eventually, but it was empty. No cars, no pavement, just endless dirt fading into black. Jason was panting, clutching his chest. They don't want us leaving. I don't know how long we stumbled. Time didn't work right in that place. Finally, we saw headlights, blinding, too bright. A truck rumbled past us, a ranger's truck. But when it passed, there was no driver. The cab was empty. The next thing I remember clearly is waking up in my own bed. My camera was gone. My car had dust all over it, like I'd been driving through dirt roads all night. Jason won't talk about it. He doesn't answer my calls anymore. Last I heard from his sister, he moved back to Arizona, won't leave his apartment. And me? I didn't take anything from Bodhi, I swear I didn't, but they followed me anyway. Every night when the house gets quiet, I hear them. Whispers in the walls, footsteps in the hall. I see figures in the corner of my eye, standing still, waiting. If you ever go to Bodhi, listen to me. Leave before sundown. Don't linger. Don't hide. Don't think you're braver than the ones who built that town and died there. Because the truth is, Bodhi isn't abandoned. It's waiting. And once it notices you, it never lets you go. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. I've tried whiskey, pills, white noise machines, all of it. Nothing helps. Every night when the lights go out, I see her face against the dark. Her eyes look hollow, as if they were scooped out and replaced with black glass. And I swear, if I close my eyes long enough, I hear the crunch of gravel under her shoes coming closer to my bed. I should never have gone to Calico. Back in the summer of 2017, I was living in Barstow, California, about 15 miles from the old mining town. Barstow's one of those desert towns that feels like it shouldn't exist. Sand, chain motels, Dollar Generals, and truck stops. My best friend Javier worked at a gas station off the I-15, and we'd kill long nights talking about stupid things. Girls, cars we'd never own, jobs we hated. He was the one who brought up Calico. You ever been out there at night? He asked one evening, handing me a Coke from the cooler. I've been during the day, I told him. Tourist trap, fake saloon, candy shop, all that. He shook his head. No, man, at night. Place changes after dark. They say there's a woman who wanders by the cemetery. White dress, long hair, looking for her kids. I laughed. That's a campfire story, Javi. He didn't laugh back. My uncle swears he saw her in the 80s. Said she followed him all the way back to Yermo. I wanted to brush it off, but the way he said it stuck with me. The desert does that. It plants a seed in your head and lets it grow in the silence. A week later, we drove out there. Calico is strange in the moonlight. The daytime carnival atmosphere vanishes and what's left looks brittle, like a stage set that's been abandoned. Wind rattled loose boards on the saloon. Dust hissed down the old main street. We parked near the cemetery, A patch of ground, fenced off by crooked iron and dotted with crude wooden markers. Javi killed the engine, and for a while neither of us spoke. It was just the sound of the desert, coyotes far off, a truck's hum on the highway, the whisper of grit against metal. Then Javi pulled out a flashlight. "You scared?" "Of splinters, maybe," I muttered, but my mouth was dry. We stepped through the gate. The graves were mostly children's, small wooden crosses leaning in the sand. The ground smelled of dust and sage. I bent to read one marker, the paint long since bled by sun and wind. Maria Lopez, age 7, 1884. That's when I heard it. The sound was faint at first, like fabric dragging over rock. I thought it was the wind until I looked at Javi and saw his eyes fixed on the far end of the cemetery. A shape moved between the crosses. White. Slow. Like someone gliding instead of walking. "Hello?" Javi called out, his voice cracking. The figure turned. I'll never forget it. A woman in a dress the color of bone. Her hair hung down in ropes, her face pale and soft as wax. She looked right at us, though her eyes seemed wrong. Black, too deep, too wide. Her lips parted as if she were about to speak, but no sound came out. We bolted, scrambling over the fence, gravel crunching under our sneakers. Javi fumbled with the keys, started the engine, and tore down the desert road back toward Barstow. For a few miles, we didn't say a word. My chest felt hollow, my skin tight with cold sweat. When we finally slowed, Javi whispered, "She was real. You saw her too, right?" I nodded. I couldn't deny it. I should have left it alone, but something about her pulled at me, like she wanted to be understood. Over the next week, I couldn't shake the image. At work, in the shower, lying in bed, I saw her standing among those child-sized graves. My mom noticed I wasn't sleeping. I told her I was fine. 3 nights later, I woke up to a sound outside my bedroom window. Gravel shifting. Slow, deliberate steps. I froze. My window looked out on the side yard, just dirt and a chain-link fence. No one had any reason to be there. I lay in bed, holding my breath. The steps stopped right outside, then came the scraping. Like fabric against metal. I couldn't look. My eyes burned with tears, my body stiff as stone. The sound lingered, then drifted away. The next morning, there was a white footprint in the dirt by the fence, bare, small, as if pressed into the earth by something lighter than a real body. I didn't tell Javi, didn't tell anyone, but the sounds came back, night after night. Sometimes the crunch of steps, sometimes the low moan of wind carrying a woman's voice. Once I woke to find the window open, curtains billowing. I hadn't opened it. The worst was the night I finally looked. I don't know what made me do it, curiosity, defiance, madness, but I lifted my head from the pillow and glanced at the glass. She was there, standing outside, inches from the pane. The white dress hung limp, dirty around the hem. Her face pressed against the glass, flattening, her black eyes fixed on me. Her lips moved soundlessly. I screamed. My mom burst into the room, but by then the window was empty. We left for Los Angeles the next day, stayed with family. But it didn't help. She followed me. In the city, in my aunt's apartment near Echo Park, I woke to the same sounds. Gravel crunching where there was no gravel. A woman's whisper under the hum of traffic. Once, walking home at dusk, I saw her reflection in a shop window, though the street behind me was empty. I researched, desperate for answers. Calico's history is filled with tragedy. Mines caving in, fires, sickness. They say in 1890, a woman named Elena lost both her children when a shaft collapsed. She searched for days, calling their names until her throat gave out. She died not long after pneumonia, they said, though some whispered she threw herself into the pit. It fits, doesn't it? A mother still looking for her children. But knowing doesn't help. She wants something from me. Some nights she reaches toward me, her fingers stretching through the glass like smoke. I never stay in one place long anymore. I move every few months, but she's always there, waiting by whatever window I try to sleep behind. If you ever go to Calico, don't stop at the cemetery. Don't look too long at the graves, and if you see her, don't acknowledge her. Don't let her know you noticed, because once you do, she'll follow you home and she never stops looking. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. I keep smelling smoke in my apartment even though nothing's burning. The fire alarms are fine. My neighbors don't smell it, but I swear it's there. Charred wood, thick and sour, the kind that stings the back of your throat. Every time it drifts through my bedroom, I remember Cerro Gordo and the shack that never really burned. I used to laugh at ghost town stories. California is full of them. Forgotten mining camps and towns that sprang up during the Silver Rush and then rotted away. Cerro Gordo is one of the better-known ones, perched high above Owens Valley, up past Lone Pine where the air thins out and the desert feels endless. I'd read about it online, the way some people still see lights up there, hear the sound of picks and hammers in the night. My friend Matt was obsessed with it. He worked graveyard shifts at a gas station in Ridgecrest and spent his off days looking for haunted places to explore. "You gotta see it," he told me one evening, his knee bouncing with restless energy. We were sitting in his garage with a couple beers, his golden retriever panting beside us. Cerro Gordo isn't like Bodie, man. It's quieter. The kind of place that feels like the earth swallowed it and forgot. But there's this shack. They say it burns without fire. I rolled my eyes. What the hell does that even mean? Matt grinned. "You'll see." That was early August when the desert still baked even at night. The following weekend, we drove up in his old Tacoma, taking 395 north. The air shimmered with heat mirages, and the Sierra Nevadas loomed sharp and blue against the horizon. I remember we stopped in Lone Pine for burritos and sodas, and the lady at the counter asked where we were headed. When Matt said Cerro Gordo, she froze a moment too long before forcing a polite smile. "Not much up there," she said. "Best be careful. Roads get rough, we didn't think much of it. People always have warnings about abandoned places. That's half the fun." The dirt road that climbed toward Cerro Gordo was brutal. Switchbacks cut into loose gravel, with nothing but open drop-offs on one side. My knuckles were white on the grab handle as Matt laughed, bouncing us over ruts and rocks. At the top, the ghost town came into view. Weathered wooden buildings leaning against the wind. Tin roofs rusted orange, a few scattered mining carts frozen on the slope. It was like stepping back 100 years. We parked beside what looked like an old bunkhouse. The silence hit me first. No birds, no wind through the brush. Nothing but the faint creak of wood contracting in the sun. The air smelled dry and metallic like iron dust. Matt shouldered his backpack and nodded down the dirt path. "Come on, shack's this way." We wandered past collapsed structures, a blacksmith shop with its roof caved in, the skeletal remains of a saloon. The sun was sinking, throwing long shadows that stretched like black fingers across the dust. That's when I saw it. At the edge of the town, perched apart from the other buildings, stood a small shack. It wasn't much, just 4 walls of warped planks and a slanted roof barely holding together. But the wood shimmered, almost like it was glowing from within. The air around it wavered the way it does above asphalt on a scorching day. "Holy shit," I whispered. Matt grinned. "Told you." We walked closer, and that's when the smell hit me. Burning wood, thick and pungent like we were standing beside a campfire. My throat tightened. The shack looked alive, as if embers crawled beneath the planks, but there were no flames, no crackling, no smoke. Just that impossible glow. Matt circled it with wide eyes, pulling out his phone. "No way this is a trick. It's hot, feel it." He pressed his palm near the wall and yanked it back. "Jesus, it's like an oven." I reached out too. The air around it burned against my skin, but when I touched the wood, it was cold. Wrong, dead cold. My hand recoiled on its own. "Let's go," I muttered. Matt laughed. "You're not curious? Don't you want to see inside?" I didn't, but he was already pulling the door open. Inside was dark, the glow barely bleeding through the cracks. The shack was empty except for a rusted iron bed frame and a pile of ash in the corner. Not fresh ash, old pale like it had been there for decades. The smell of burning wood was suffocating inside, though nothing smoked. Matt crouched, poking the ash with a stick. "It's cold," he said. "No heat at all." But he stopped. "What?" He stood slowly, his face pale. "Something's under it." Before I could stop him, he kicked the pile aside. Beneath the gray dust was a burned outline on the floorboards, a human shape. Arms spread, head tilted, legs curled in a fetal position. The blackened imprint of a body burned deep into the wood. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. "Let's get the hell out." Matt snapped a picture, muttering, "This is insane." As we stepped out, the shack's glow flickered brighter, like a pulse. I swear the ground trembled beneath my feet. The sun was gone now, and the desert was steeped in purple shadow. That's when I heard it. A faint sound carried on the still air. Not wind, not animals. A voice. "Help." I froze. Matt didn't seem to hear it. He was scrolling through his phone, grinning at his photos. The voice came again, clearer this time. A woman's voice, ragged and desperate. "Help me." The smell of burning wood surged thick enough to choke me. I grabbed Matt's arm. "We're leaving now," he frowned. "Dude, relax. Nobody's here." But when I glanced back, I swear I saw her. Just for a second, through the cracks in the wall, a face glowing red like molten coal, eyes wide and hollow, mouth open in a scream that never ended. We ran. Neither of us spoke until we reached the truck. Matt's hand shook as he turned the key. The engine roared, and we tore down the switchbacks in a storm of gravel and dust. That night, I barely slept. I kept smelling smoke. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of the shack, its glow spreading across the desert, swallowing the town, swallowing me. The next morning, Matt called. His voice was tight, panicked. "The pictures are gone." "What do you mean?" "Just gone. My phone's fine, everything else is there, but the shack pictures, blank. Like they never existed." I told him to delete everything, to forget it. He just laughed nervously and said he wanted to go back, to figure it out. I begged him not to. I never saw him again. 2 days later, his truck was found abandoned near the trailhead, driver's side door open, keys still in the ignition. No sign of him. They searched the hills for a week, nothing, and now it's me. Every night since then, the smell has followed me. Sometimes I wake up and the walls of my apartment glow faintly in the dark, just for a second. Sometimes I hear that voice, faint but close. "Help me. If you ever go to Cerro Gordo and see that shack, don't go inside. Don't touch the ash. Don't listen. Because once you do, it follows you. And when the smell of burning wood seeps through your door, it's already too late." If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. People think the desert is empty, that it swallows up everything human and leaves only silence, but that's not true. There are things that survive in the silence, things that wait for someone stupid enough to come looking. I grew up in Ridgecrest, California, about an hour-and-a-half drive from Death Valley. My Uncle Mike used to take me on these little road trips when I was a kid. He loved old ghost towns, places that time forgot. He'd pack a cooler with Cokes, play scratchy country songs on his truck's radio, and tell me stories about miners who drank themselves to death in lonely saloons or gamblers who got shot under oil lamps that haven't burned in 100 years. Ballarat was one of those places. If you've never heard of it, don't feel bad. Most people haven't. It's a crumbling little ghost town just off Panamint Valley Road, tucked against the desert mountains. There's an old jail, some wooden shacks half-eaten by sun and wind, and a saloon. Its weather-beaten sign barely legible now. That saloon is what people whisper about. Visitors swear they hear piano keys drifting out of it late at night. Sometimes just a couple of notes, sometimes a whole sequence like some invisible hand is playing. Of course, when you peek inside, there's nothing but dust and broken furniture. The piano inside has no strings left, no soundboard. It's a carcass. Uncle Mike used to joke about it, calling it the Silent Saloon. He'd clap me on the back and say, "Kid, if you ever hear music out here, run the other way." I thought it was funny. Until the summer of 2016, I was 23, restless, stuck in Ridgecrest working dead-end shifts at a gas station. My girlfriend, Lena, had just left me. My uncle had passed the year before from liver cancer, and I kept finding myself thinking about those ghost town trips, about Ballarat in particular. So one hot July afternoon, I decided to drive out there alone. The desert heat was a living thing. My old Civic rattled on the cracked highway, AC blasting like a hairdryer. I brought a backpack with some water, a flashlight, and a cheap camping hammock. I told myself I'd just take some pictures, maybe stay until sunset, soak in the loneliness of the place. When I pulled up, there wasn't another soul around. Just that wide, empty desert, mountains rising up like rusted teeth, and the sagging skeleton of Ballarat. The silence was so deep I could hear my own pulse in my ears. I wandered the ruins, snapping photos, trying to imagine life here when miners filled the streets. My boots crunched through dust that hadn't been disturbed in decades. By the time I reached the saloon, the sun was already dipping, painting everything orange. The door creaked when I pushed it. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and wood rot. A few bar stools leaned drunkenly against the counter. Broken glass glinted in the dirt. And there, at the far end of the room, stood the piano. I swear it looked worse than I remembered. Its wood warped and cracked. One leg collapsed so it tilted like a drunk. Keys were missing and the ones left were yellowed like old teeth. I knew it couldn't make a sound, but the moment I stepped inside I felt something. Not a draft, not a noise, just a pressure. Like being watched. I should have left then. Instead, I set up my hammock between two posts outside, maybe 50 feet from the saloon. The desert night cooled fast, stars punching holes in the dark sky. I cracked a beer, leaned back, and tried to enjoy the peace. Around midnight, I woke up to a sound. At first, I thought it was the wind moving through the dry wood. But no, this was different. It was music. Faint, broken, but unmistakable. Piano keys, my skin prickled. I sat up, holding my breath. The notes came in halting bursts like a drunk trying to remember a song. 4 or 5 keys, then silence. Then another little run, higher pitched this time. I stared at the saloon's doorway. It was just a black rectangle in the dark. No light, no movement. Just that sound, drifting faint as smoke. I wanted to believe it was my imagination. Sleep paralysis, maybe? Except when I shifted in my hammock, the music stopped. Dead. Then something inside the saloon shifted. A scrape like wood dragging against dirt. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just lay there clutching my flashlight, eyes burning from staring too long. At first light, I packed up fast and bolted for the car. But before I pulled away, I looked back. The saloon door was open wider than I'd left it. I told myself I'd never go back. And I didn't for almost a year. But people are stupid. Curiosity rots you from the inside. In May 2017, my buddy Raul came back from college. We were drinking beers in his backyard when I told him about the piano. He laughed in my face. "You're telling me you camped outside a haunted saloon and didn't even go inside?" "What the hell, man?" I didn't want to admit how scared I'd been, so I agreed to take him. We left the next afternoon in his Jeep, stocked with a cooler and a GoPro. Raul was all bravado, cracking jokes about ghost miners. But when we pulled into Ballarat, the jokes died off. The place has that effect, it feels wrong. The saloon loomed like a broken tooth. Its door hung crooked, swaying just slightly in the breeze. We set up inside this time, Raul determined to catch something on camera. He propped the GoPro on the counter facing the piano. We sat on the floor with our beers, the desert night pressing in through broken windows. For hours, nothing happened. Just the creak of wood, the occasional hiss of wind. Around 2 a.m., Raul was nodding off and I was fighting sleep myself. Then it started. A single note, clear, loud. The piano. Raul jerked awake, eyes wide. "You hear that?" Before I could answer, another note rang out. Then another. 3 in quick succession, echoing sharp in the rotten wood room. I shone my flashlight on the piano. Nothing moved, but the keys kept pressing down. Not random this time, a tune. Something old, ragged, but definitely a melody. Raul scrambled to grab the GoPro. His hands shook so badly he almost dropped it. Then the air changed. That's the only way I can describe it. The temperature dropped and the smell, God, the smell hit us. Like wet wood and old whiskey, layered over something sour like meat left in the sun. The piano hammered faster. The notes rising, wild, discordant, and then we heard it. Laughter. It came from the dark corner near the piano. Low and broken, like someone choking on their own amusement. Raul swore, shoved the GoPro into his bag and grabbed my arm. "We're leaving." We bolted out the door, stumbling into the night. The desert felt alive with noise now. The piano still playing behind us, laughter chasing us into the Jeep. We didn't stop until we hit Ridgecrest. The next morning, Raul called me, voice trembling. "Man, I checked the footage." "You don't want to see it," I asked what he meant. "The keys. They're moving by themselves. And there's something sitting at the piano, like a shadow. But when I pause it, the shape's closer, each time, like it knows it's being watched." He deleted the footage that same day. Swore he'd never go back, me? I should have let it go. But I can't. Because sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in bed, I hear it again. Just faint, just enough. A few piano notes drifting in through my window. And I live over 100 miles from Ballarat. If you ever find yourself out near Panamint Valley, don't stop. Don't listen. And for God's sake, if you hear music where there shouldn't be any, run. because the silence of the desert doesn't mean it's empty. It means it's waiting. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. I don't tell this story to anyone in person, not even my brother. But I know what I saw and I know what happened to me out there. This isn't some campfire tale. This happened on the road to Darwin, California, late one summer night. And if you ever find yourself heading that way, maybe you'll think twice before taking that stretch of highway. I was 25 when it happened. Driving west out of Death Valley after a long, blistering day of exploring abandoned mining towns. My friend Lucas had dragged me out there. He was obsessed with ghost towns, peeling paint, rusted out machinery, the kind of places that looked like time had given up. He had a camera always slung around his neck, snapping shots of boarded up windows and collapsed roofs. I just tagged along, sweating through my shirt and waiting for the trip to be over. We'd started early that morning, hitting Ballarat first, then Ski-Doo. By evening, we were headed toward Darwin, a half-forgotten town perched off Highway 190. It was the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. Weathered trailers, leaning wooden shacks, the bleached bones of a community that barely clung to existence. People said maybe 40 folks still lived there. The desert had swallowed the rest. We stopped at the only gas station for miles, a squat, low building with a flickering fluorescent light that hummed like an insect. The pump was so old it looked like it belonged in a museum. While Lucas filled up, I went inside. The air smelled like dust and stale tobacco. Behind the counter sat an old man with skin like parchment and cloudy blue eyes. "Where you boys headed?" he asked, voice dry and flat. "Darwin," I said. He gave me a long look. "Road's tricky at night. Folks get turned around. Sometimes they don't come back the same." I tried to laugh, but his face didn't move. Lucas came in, wiping sweat from his forehead. The old man didn't take his eyes off me when he added, "Keep the radio off once you hit the ridge. That's when it starts." I should have asked what he meant, but I didn't. We left just as the sun was dropping behind the jagged hills, painting the desert in a bruise-colored glow. The road to Darwin was nothing more than cracked asphalt winding through emptiness. No streetlights, no guardrails. Only the occasional Joshua tree leaning like a broken scarecrow. The silence out there was total, the kind that presses against your ears until you swear you can hear your own blood moving. Lucas was excited, rambling about the photos he'd taken, talking about maybe starting a blog about forgotten places. I barely listened. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, my throat dry from the desert air. I glanced at the radio dial even though it wasn't on. For some reason, the old man's warning gnawed at me. We crested the ridge about 40 minutes later. That's when it started. First, a faint scratch like static seeping from the speakers even though the radio was still off. I turned the knob anyway. Dead air. But the static kept rising like something tuning itself in. Lucas leaned forward, curious. "Dude, you hear that?" It wasn't just noise anymore. It was voices. Faint, tinny, like a recording from another era. A slow, dragging tune sung low by men with rough voices. It sounded like work songs, the kind miners might have sung while hauling ore out of shafts. The words were blurred, but I caught fragments. "Down the shaft. Devil's gold, bones in the dust." Lucas grinned. "That's wild. Some old station bleeding through?" I didn't answer. My stomach was twisting. The song grew louder, echoing unnaturally in the cabin as if the car itself were vibrating with it. Then the headlights flickered once, twice, and died. We were swallowed by blackness so thick it felt solid. I slammed the brakes. The car rolled to a stop, engine coughing out. No dash lights, no power. Just us, stranded in the middle of the desert night with that damn singing still pouring through the speakers. Lucas grabbed his phone. No signal. He laughed nervously, but I could see the sheen of sweat on his face. Guess we're part of the ghost story now. Then the air changed. The heat, which had been suffocating all day, suddenly dropped. I could see my breath fogging in the beam of the flashlight Lucas switched on. That made no sense. Not in Death Valley. Shapes began moving outside the car, just beyond the thin cone of light. At first I thought it was heat mirage, but the longer I stared, the clearer they became. Men, dozens of them, gaunt and dirty, their clothes tattered, their faces blackened with soot. They carried picks and shovels, some dragging heavy sacks behind them. None of them looked at us. They just trudged along the road singing that same slow, mournful song. Lucas whispered, "Holy shit, are you seeing this?" I couldn't move. My fingers dug into the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. One of the miners turned his head as he passed the car. His eyes were pale, milky white, and when his mouth opened, the song swelled louder in the speakers. The flashlight flickered and died. We were in total darkness, surrounded by voices that didn't belong in this century. I don't know how long we sat there. Time stretched, broke apart. I remember gripping Lucas's arm, whispering to him to stay quiet, even though the voices drowned out everything. My head ached from the vibrations. Then, just as suddenly, the song stopped. Silence. The headlights blinked back on. The engine roared to life under my hands, but Lucas wasn't in the seat beside me. I screamed his name, scrambled out of the car with the flashlight. The desert was empty. No footprints in the sand. No trace of him. Just the endless black horizon. I searched for hours, shouting until my throat bled. Nothing. Finally, in a daze, I got back into the car and drove. I don't remember turning the key. I don't remember shifting gears. One moment I was on that cursed road. The next I was pulling into a motel parking lot in Lone Pine, hours away, though it felt like minutes had passed. When I asked the clerk what time it was, he said it was nearly 9 a.m. I had lost almost 12 hours. The police searched. They combed the desert. They said maybe Lucas wandered off, got lost, succumbed to the elements. I tried to explain what I saw, what I heard, but the looks they gave me shut me up. They didn't believe me. They never found his body. Sometimes late at night I turn the dial on my radio, half hoping, half dreading. And every so often, faint and scratchy, I hear it again. That low, dragging song of men buried in the earth. Voices of workers who never made it out. When it happens, I switch it off as fast as I can. But I swear I can still hear it in my head, long after the static dies. If you're listening to this and you ever find yourself on the road to Darwin after dark, don't stop, don't listen, and for God's sake, don't look at them. Because if you do, you might not come back the same, or at all. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. I don't expect anyone to believe me, and honestly, I wouldn't if it hadn't happened to me. But something rides the hills above Bodfish, California, and once you've seen it, you'll never forget. I grew up in Bakersfield, but I moved east a few years ago when I inherited my uncle's little house outside Bodfish. If you don't know the place, it's a small town near Lake Isabella, tucked into those brown, rolling Kern County hills where the land is dry enough to crack and the air feels like it's been baking for a century. The mountains loom dusty and quiet, the kind of silence that presses into your ears until you start hearing things that aren't there. The house sat off Lake Isabella Boulevard, close enough to the gas station with the broken sign, but far enough that the nights went black. My neighbors were sparse. The nearest was a man named Dale, a Vietnam vet who chain-smoked on his porch. He had one of those gravelly voices that sounded like it came from deep underground. Across the road was an old woman, Mrs. Alvarez, who used to wave at me from behind her crooked fence while her German shepherd barked its head off. Life there was simple. Hot days, cooler nights, the faint smell of creosote and dust on the wind. I'd sit out back on a lawn chair, a beer sweating in my hand, watching the sky bruise into purple over the hills. It felt peaceful in that lonely kind of way. The first strange thing came on a Tuesday in late October. I was taking the trash out, just before midnight. The air was still, heavy, and the moon was bright enough to bleach the dirt pale. That's when I heard it, the distinct sound of hooves striking the hard earth. Slow, deliberate, like someone leading a horse across the ridge behind my house. I froze, listening. Horses weren't common out there anymore. The sound carried sharp against the silence. I waited for the snort, the creak of saddle leather, the jingle of tack, but nothing came. Just hooves. I walked to the edge of my property and looked up at the ridgeline. The silhouette of a rider passed against the moon, black and perfect, man on horseback. My stomach clenched. Then the rider vanished, just stepped out of existence. One moment there, the next gone. No dust kicked up, no sound after the hooves stopped. I stood there with the garbage bag in my hand until the coyote started yipping in the canyon. The next morning, I asked Dale if anyone around here kept horses. He shook his head and squinted like he was weighing whether to say something. Finally, he flicked his cigarette and muttered, "You keep your eyes down after dark. Don't go chasing shadows." That's my advice. I laughed it off at first. Maybe I was tired. Maybe it was some trick of the moonlight. But then it happened again. This time I wasn't alone. A week later, my friend Jenna drove up from Bakersfield to spend the weekend. We'd gone to high school together, lost touch, then reconnected online. She was the adventurous type, always dragging me into hikes or midnight drives when we were younger. Saturday night, we were sitting in my yard, drinking and catching up, when she stopped mid-sentence and pointed. "Do you hear that? The hooves." Clear as day, I saw her face change, the grin draining away, eyes fixed on the hill. We both watched as the rider appeared again, black against the moon, horse gliding soundlessly. This time I swear I saw its legs move, but the ground made no noise. The rider sat straight backed, a hat brim low over his face. "Holy shit," Jenna whispered. "What the hell is that?" Before I could answer, the rider turned its head toward us. I couldn't see eyes, but I felt them, heavy and cold like the weight of a stone pressing on my chest. The horse kept moving until both rider and animal dissolved into nothing. We didn't speak for a long time. Finally, Jenna said, "I don't like this. Let's go inside." After that, the air in the house felt wrong, like the silence had followed us in. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the desert wind against the siding, felt magnified. Neither of us slept well. The next morning, Jenna wanted to leave early. She kept glancing at the hills like they were watching her. I tried to convince her it was nothing, but I didn't believe it myself. Things escalated after she left. I started hearing the hooves every night, always at the same hour just before midnight. Sometimes the rider would appear on the ridge, sometimes closer, slipping between the boulders like mist. My dog Rusty refused to go outside after dark. He'd whine at the door, tail between his legs, and sometimes bark toward the empty hills. One night I made the mistake of calling out. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself it was human, that there was some rational explanation. I shouted up at the rider, "Hey, who are you?" The hooves stopped.
Dead silence.
The rider turned his head, slow and deliberate, and this time he wasn't on the ridge. He was halfway down, closer than I'd ever seen him. My skin went ice cold. I stumbled backward into the house and slammed the door. Rusty growled low in his throat, staring at the window like something was just outside. I didn't sleep at all that night. I started digging into local stories. Asked Mrs. Alvarez about it when she brought over tamales one afternoon. She crossed herself and told me not to speak of him. El Jinete, she called him, the rider, said he'd been seen since her grandfather's time, a spirit bound to the hills. Some said he was a bandit, shot down and buried without ceremony. Others said he was a miner, trampled by his own horse. A few whispered darker things, that he was death itself, wandering the earth on a silent mount. I tried to brush it off, but the encounters kept getting worse. Sometimes I'd see him closer, lingering at the edge of my property. Once I woke to the sound of hooves circling my house over and over, the boards rattling with each phantom step. When I looked out, there was nothing. No tracks, no disturbed dirt. The worst was the night I left my bedroom window open. I woke at 12:03 to a foul smell like dust mixed with rot. The sound of leather creaking filled the room. My heart nearly stopped when I realized it was coming from inside. I didn't dare move. I just lay there frozen, eyes shut tight. I heard breathing, low and steady. Not human, but not entirely animal either. When I finally opened my eyes, the room was empty. But the smell lingered for days, clinging to my clothes, my sheets, even my skin. Now, I'm telling you this because I don't think it's going to stop. I've thought about leaving, but something in me knows it won't matter. People talk about ghosts being tied to places, but this one feels different. Like it's tied to me now. Last night, for the first time, the rider didn't vanish. He stopped at the edge of my yard, horse still, both of them staring straight at my window. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then, slowly, he lifted a hand and pointed at me. I don't know what that means. I don't want to find out. If you're ever in Bodfish, if you hear hooves at midnight, don't look up at the hills. Don't acknowledge him. Because once you see the phantom rider, he sees you too. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I hear gravel crunching behind me, slow and steady, like someone trying not to be noticed. I see it too in the corner of my vision, a dark shape that isn't supposed to be there, always one step behind, just waiting. It started last year in Rhyolite, Nevada, and if you've ever been there, you'll know why it feels wrong to even talk about. I wasn't supposed to end up in Rhyolite. I was driving from San Bernardino to Las Vegas, taking the long way through Death Valley. because my friend Travis had this obsession with ghost towns. He'd convinced me that if I was already close, I might as well stop and take a look. "You'll love it," he told me. "It's like stepping back in time, man. Desert air, busted saloons, old hotels, you can almost hear the miners." He had this way of making everything sound like an adventure. I didn't love it. Not even a little. The sun was already sinking when I pulled off US 95 and followed the dusty road toward Rhyolite. The desert stretched in every direction, flat and endless, the mountains bleeding purple at their edges. Heat shimmered off the asphalt, even in the evening, and the closer I got, the more I realized how alone I was out there. No houses, no cars, just silence broken by the wind hissing through sagebrush. Rhyolite isn't really a town anymore, just a cluster of ruins scattered across the desert. The bones of buildings, the cook bank with its crumbling 3-story facade, the bottle house patched together with glass bottles, the old jail with iron bars still bolted into place. There's a creepy open-air museum too, with ghostly statues some Belgian artist left in the 80s. Tourists call it quirky. Standing there with no one else around, it felt like the opposite of quirky. It felt like a place where people vanish. I parked near the bank, killed the engine, and sat for a minute with the AC humming, trying to convince myself to step outside. My phone had no service. The radio was just static. The sky was this bruised color and the shadows stretched long and thin, almost like they were alive. I finally got out, my boots kicking up dust. The air smelled dry, metallic, like rust baking in the sun. My footsteps echoed weirdly off the stone walls, too loud for how empty the place was. I told myself I'd just take a few pictures, enough to send to Travis so he'd shut up about it. That's when I noticed it. At first, it was nothing. Just movement, I thought, maybe a bird flying overhead or my shadow stretching funny. But then I realized my shadow wasn't moving like me. When I stepped left, it hesitated like it was waiting. When I bent to tie my boot, it straightened a second too late. My chest tightened. I laughed it off, tried to shake it, but the more I walked, the more I felt it. Something was following me. The sound gave it away. Crunch, pause, crunch, just behind me, perfectly timed, but never mine. I spun around fast, hard in my throat, but the street was empty. Just ruins and desert. I tried walking faster, then slower, testing it. The footsteps stayed in rhythm, always half a beat late, like an echo with weight. My hands were sweating so bad I almost dropped my phone. I thought about calling out just to break the silence, but what would I even say? I made for the bottle house. The walls of green and brown glass glowed faintly in the fading light. I ducked inside, half convinced I'd find someone there. Nobody. Just dust and silence. But when I turned, the shadow stretched across the doorway, darker than it should have been, thicker. I swear it swelled against the wall like it was breathing. That was the first time I ran. I don't know how long I ran through that ghost town, weaving between buildings, trying to lose something that didn't even have a body. The sound followed, steady, patient, like it knew I couldn't outrun it. By the time I reached my car, my lungs were burning, and I fumbled the keys so bad I dropped them in the dirt. When I finally got inside, I slammed the doors, locked them, and just sat there staring out the windshield. The street was empty. Nothing moved. But when I glanced at the rearview mirror, I saw it. A smear of darkness in the back seat, like a person hunched down low, just out of sight. I whipped around, but the seat was empty. I drove out of Rhyolite so fast I nearly spun the tires bald. The desert blurred by, and I didn't stop until I saw the neon lights of Beatty glowing like salvation. I told myself I was imagining it, that my brain was fried from heat and paranoia. But the feeling didn't go away. Back in San Bernardino, things got worse. It started small. I'd be brushing my teeth and catch movement in the mirror, a shadow just behind me where there shouldn't be one. Walking home from the grocery store, I'd hear footsteps trailing mine, even when the sidewalk was empty. At night in my apartment, I'd wake up to the sound of someone breathing at the foot of my bed, slow and steady, always one step behind. I stopped talking to Travis. He kept texting me about how the trip went, wanting to see the pictures. I never sent them. I didn't want to explain why the photos all looked wrong. In every shot, there was a dark shape behind me, even when no one was there. It's been months now. I moved apartments. I even switched jobs, hoping maybe distance would shake it. But it's here with me no matter where I go. I can feel it now as I record this, standing just over my shoulder. I can't see it directly, but the air bends around it, like heat above asphalt. I know this doesn't sound real, You're probably thinking I'm crazy or paranoid or both. But if you ever visit Rhyolite, if you ever stand among those ruins as the sun goes down, just listen. Really listen. When you hear footsteps that aren't yours, don't turn around. Don't acknowledge it. And whatever you do, don't take it with you. Because once it finds you, it never stops. And now it's here, waiting for me to finish. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. Why every time I hear a child laugh, even from a neighbor's yard, even from the TV, I feel that same dread settle in my bones. Because I know laughter can be wrong. It can be broken, hollow, a sound that doesn't belong to anything living anymore. It started last summer when my friend Lucas dragged me out to Death Valley. He's the kind of guy who's always looking for forgotten places, abandoned towns, mines, ghost towns. The darker and more dangerous, the better. I'm more of a beer and backyard type, but he had this way of convincing me. He told me about Panamint City like it was some kind of treasure hunt, an old silver mining boomtown that burned to the ground in the 1870s, tucked up in the Panamint Mountains, 10 miles from anything resembling a road. It's like hiking into history, he said, smiling that big lopsided grin of his. The hike was brutal. We started from Ballarat, this little speck of a place that looks like even the tumbleweeds gave up on it. We parked near a trailer with a general store sign painted on its side, but it was empty, sun-bleached. The air was already shimmering with heat even though it wasn't noon yet. The trail twisted up Surprise Canyon and the name felt like a joke. No surprise other than how fast you wanted to die climbing it. Dry creek bed, boulders the size of trucks, walls of rock closing in so tight you felt like you were walking into a throat. By the time we reached the ruins, the sun was going down. The air was cooler, but it carried this stillness that didn't feel right. Panamint City sits in a long, narrow canyon, broken chimneys and stone walls half-eaten by time. You can still see outlines of streets, the bones of houses, rusted metal scraps left like offerings to the desert. And the silence, it wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the heavy kind, like the ground was waiting. We pitched our tent near what looked like an old stone foundation. I remember Lucas laughing when I asked if we were allowed to camp here. Allowed? Who's gonna stop us? The miners' ghosts? He cracked a beer, handed me one, and the canyon walls threw our voices back at us like they didn't want us there. That night, I woke up around 2 in the morning. I don't know what pulled me out of sleep, maybe the air, maybe the silence. But then I heard it, faint, drifting through the canyon, children laughing. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Just thin, high voices skipping on the night air. I froze, listening. Out here, miles from the nearest house, no way there were kids. My first thought was coyotes. They can sound strange in the dark. But coyotes yip and bark. They don't laugh. This was laughter. And the longer I listened, the more wrong it felt. I shook Lucas awake. You hear that? He blinked, annoyed. Then he tilted his head. His grin disappeared. That's weird, he whispered. We sat there in the dark, holding our breath while the laughter rose and fell. Sometimes close, sometimes like it was coming from high up in the rocks. Sometimes like it was circling us, Lucas finally muttered. Must be some echo, wind. But he didn't sound convinced. Neither of us slept the rest of the night. The next morning, we walked through the ruins. I kept expecting to see footprints, some sign of campers or hikers we hadn't noticed, but the dirt was untouched. No recent tracks, no tire marks, just the scars of old wagon roads crumbling back into earth. We split up at one point. Lucas wandered toward a collapsed mine entrance while I poked around the remnants of a brick building. I found old bottles, shattered ceramic, rusted nails. When I turned one corner, though, I stopped cold. There were handprints on the wall. Dozens of them. Small, too small for adults. They were smeared into the stone as if pressed there. Not painted, not carved. Just darker than the rock, like shadows. I called for Lucas, but when he came over, the wall was clean. Nothing. He laughed at me again, said the heat was frying my brain. But he kept glancing over his shoulder as we walked back to camp. That night, the laughter came earlier. Around midnight. Louder this time. And it wasn't just laughter. There were whispers woven through it like children daring each other to get closer, to play a game. I swear I felt tiny feet running in the dirt just outside the tent. At one point, something tugged the corner of the canvas. Lucas whispered, "Don't open it." His voice was trembling. I don't think I've ever heard him sound scared before. We lay there until dawn, every nerve on fire. When the sun finally came, the ground around our tent was smooth. No prints, no marks, just wind-blown dust. That morning Lucas was quiet, not his usual cocky self. He said maybe we should pack up, but he didn't move, just sat staring at the canyon walls. Then he said something I'll never forget. "They want us to play." I asked him what he meant, and he just shook his head, muttering. We left soon after. The hike down felt longer, heavier. The canyon seemed to close tighter around us, like something was following just out of sight. More than once, I thought I heard a giggle behind me, but every time I spun around, the rocks were empty. We didn't talk about it much afterward. A couple weeks later, Lucas went back on his own. He texted me once from Ballarat, heading up, and that was the last I heard. His truck was found near the trailhead days later. Door open, key still inside. Search teams went up the canyon, but they never found him. I never told them about the laughter, about the children, about the way the air shifts when the sun goes down up there, like the canyon itself is holding its breath. But I hear it now, even back home in Bakersfield. Late at night, when the wind rattles the window, sometimes I catch it, faint, high, playful laughter. Like it followed me, like it's waiting for me to come back. If you ever hike out to Panamint City, don't stay the night. Don't listen for the children. And whatever you do, if you hear them laugh, don't laugh back. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. Why every time I hear a child laugh, even from a neighbor's yard, even from the TV, I feel that same dread settle in my bones. Because I know laughter can be wrong. It can be broken, hollow, a sound that doesn't belong to anything living anymore. It started last summer when my friend Lucas dragged me out to Death Valley. He's the kind of guy who's always looking for forgotten places, abandoned towns, mines, ghost towns. The darker and more dangerous, the better. I'm more of a beer and backyard type, but he had this way of convincing me. He told me about Panamint City like it was some kind of treasure hunt, an old silver mining boomtown that burned to the ground in the 1870s, tucked up in the Panamint Mountains, 10 miles from anything resembling a road. It's like hiking into history, he said, smiling that big lopsided grin of his. The hike was brutal. We started from Ballarat, this little speck of a place that looks like even the tumbleweeds gave up on it. We parked near a trailer with a general store sign painted on its side, but it was empty, sun-bleached. The air was already shimmering with heat even though it wasn't noon yet. The trail twisted up Surprise Canyon and the name felt like a joke. No surprise other than how fast you wanted to die climbing it. Dry creek bed, boulders the size of trucks, walls of rock closing in so tight you felt like you were walking into a throat. By the time we reached the ruins, the sun was going down. The air was cooler, but it carried this stillness that didn't feel right. Panamint City sits in a long, narrow canyon, broken chimneys and stone walls half-eaten by time. You can still see outlines of streets, the bones of houses, rusted metal scraps left like offerings to the desert. In the silence, it wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the heavy kind, like the ground was waiting. We pitched our tent near what looked like an old stone foundation. I remember Lucas laughing when I asked if we were allowed to camp here. Allowed? Who's gonna stop us? The miners' ghosts? He cracked a beer, handed me one, and the canyon walls threw our voices back at us like they didn't want us there. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. I don't know what pulled me out of sleep, maybe the air, maybe the silence. But then I heard it, faint, drifting through the canyon, children laughing. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either, just thin, high voices skipping on the night air. I froze, listening. Out here, miles from the nearest house, no way there were kids. My first thought was coyotes. They can sound strange in the dark, but coyotes yip and bark. They don't laugh. This was laughter, and the longer I listened, the more wrong it felt. I shook Lucas awake. "You hear that?" He blinked, annoyed. Then he tilted his head. His grin disappeared. "That's weird," he whispered. We sat there in the dark, holding our breath while the laughter rose and fell. Sometimes close, sometimes like it was coming from high up in the rocks. Sometimes like it was circling us. Lucas finally muttered, "Must be some echo, wind." But he didn't sound convinced. Neither of us slept the rest of the night. The next morning, we walked through the ruins. I kept expecting to see footprints, some sign of campers or hikers we hadn't noticed, but the dirt was untouched. No recent tracks, no tire marks, just the scars of old wagon roads crumbling back into earth. We split up at one point. Lucas wandered toward a collapsed mine entrance while I poked around the remnants of a brick building. I found old bottles, shattered ceramic, rusted nails. When I turned one corner, though, I stopped cold. There were handprints on the wall. Dozens of them. Small, too small for adults. They were smeared into the stone as if pressed there. Not painted, not carved. Just darker than the rock, like shadows. I called for Lucas, but when he came over, the wall was clean. Nothing. He laughed at me again, said the heat was frying my brain. But he kept glancing over his shoulder as we walked back to camp. That night, the laughter came earlier. Around midnight. Louder this time. And it wasn't just laughter. There were whispers woven through it, like children daring each other to get closer, to play a game. I swear I felt tiny feet running in the dirt just outside the tent. At one point, something tugged the corner of the canvas. Lucas whispered, "Don't open it." His voice was trembling. I don't think I've ever heard him sound scared before. We lay there until dawn, every nerve on fire. When the sun finally came, the ground around our tent was smooth. No prints, no marks, just wind-blown dust. That morning, Lucas was quiet, not his usual cocky self. He said maybe we should pack up, but he didn't move, just sat staring at the canyon walls. Then he said something I'll never forget. "They want us to play." I asked him what he meant, and he just shook his head, muttering. We left soon after. The hike down felt longer, heavier. The canyon seemed to close tighter around us, like something was following just out of sight. More than once, I thought I heard a giggle behind me, but every time I spun around, the rocks were empty. We didn't talk about it much afterward. A couple weeks later, Lucas went back on his own. He texted me once from Ballarat, heading up, and that was the last I heard. His truck was found near the trailhead days later. Door open, key still inside. Search teams went up the canyon, but they never found him. I never told them about the laughter, about the children, about the way the air shifts when the sun goes down up there, like the canyon itself is holding its breath. But I hear it now, even back home in Bakersfield. Late at night, when the wind rattles the window, sometimes I catch it, faint, high, playful laughter. Like it followed me, like it's waiting for me to come back. If you ever hike out to Panamint City, don't stay the night. Don't listen for the children. And whatever you do, if you hear them laugh, don't laugh back. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. It's not the kind of thing I can tell my friends or family. Not in a way that wouldn't make them look at me like I've gone off the rails. But it happened, and I need to get it out. Maybe someone out there has been through something like it. Maybe someone will believe me. I grew up in Redding, California. It's a small city, tucked up in the north part of the state, not far from Mount Shasta. Hot summers, dry as a bone, the kind of heat that makes the pavement shimmer. Winters aren't so bad. Gray skies and a chill that sneaks into your bones, but nothing like the Midwest storms you see on TV. My dad used to take us on weekend drives just to get out of town. Sometimes up to Whiskeytown Lake, sometimes further out to the old ghost town of Shasta. Shasta isn't much more than a historic park now. A line of brick ruins and reconstructed buildings on Highway 299. A few plaques telling you what used to be there. Stores, saloons, a hotel, the old county courthouse. When I was a kid, I thought it was boring. Just broken walls, a museum with old mining equipment, some rattlesnakes hiding in the tall grass. But my dad liked it. He said it gave him perspective, standing in a place that had burned out long before we were born. He liked to run his hand over the scorched bricks of the courthouse and remind me that people lived and died there, just like us. The courthouse is the one that stuck with me. 2 stories, red brick, restored enough that you can walk inside. There's a gallows out back. I remember tugging at my dad's hand the first time we went there. I didn't like it. The air always felt heavier in that place, like something pressing down on you. Fast forward 20 years. My dad passed away, cancer, and I moved back to Redding for a while to take care of my mom. I was 32, broke, working a crap job at a tire shop. On my nights off, I'd drive around just to burn time. One night I ended up on 299, and I saw the dim outline of the Shasta ruins against the sky. I don't know why, but I pulled over. It was late, probably close to midnight. The place was locked up, but that never stopped anyone. Kids cut through the fence all the time to drink or smoke weed inside. I parked under one of the old oaks, killed the engine, and climbed over. The night was dead quiet except for the sound of crickets and the distant hiss of the highway. I don't know what I expected. Nostalgia, maybe. Some weird attempt to feel close to my dad. I walked past the old storefronts, the crumbling walls outlined in moonlight. My boots crunched on gravel. When I reached the courthouse, I froze. From inside, I heard 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. I told myself it was some kids messing around, so I pushed the door open and stepped in. The smell hit me first, musty like wet wood, but also something sharper like iron. The place was empty. The moonlight came through the tall windows, throwing pale stripes across the floor. Then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. Not on the door this time. On the wall, to my right, I bolted out of there like a coward. Didn't even check if anyone was inside. I ran all the way back to my car, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might split. By the time I got in and locked the doors, the knocking had stopped. The ruin sat in silence watching me. I should have let it go. I should have written it off as nerves or some dumb prank. But it didn't let me go. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like those knocks had been for me, like they wanted my attention. A week later, I went back. This time I brought my friend Josh. He's the type who laughs at ghost stories, the type who thinks fear is just weakness. We parked in the same spot, climbed the fence, and made our way to the courthouse. I didn't tell him what I'd heard the first time. I wanted to see if it would happen again. The night was cold, our breath showing in front of us. Josh stomped through the ruins like it was nothing. When we reached the courthouse, he grinned. "This where the hangings went down?" I nodded. He went straight to the gallows out back, ran his hand over the wooden beam. "Creepy as hell. You think anyone ever died innocent here?" The question made my stomach twist. Because that's the story, isn't it? The locals say a man was wrongfully hanged, that he still knocks on the walls of the courthouse demanding someone listen. We stood there for a while, and nothing happened. I started to feel stupid. Then Josh leaned against the brick wall and tapped it with his knuckles. 3 sharp raps. Almost immediately, 3 knocks came back. I'll never forget the look on Josh's face. His grin vanished. He pushed away from the wall like it had burned him. "You did that." "I didn't," I said. My voice shook. We both backed toward the door, and that's when it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it came from inside the wall. Not an echo, not a trick. From within the bricks themselves. Josh cursed and ran, and I followed. We didn't stop until we were back at the car, sweating in the cold air. He didn't laugh anymore. He didn't talk at all. After that night, Josh wouldn't answer my calls. A week later, I heard from a mutual friend that he'd moved out of Reading. Just packed up and left, and me? I can't stop thinking about it. The sound of those knocks haunts me. Sometimes I hear them in my apartment, soft against the wall near my bed. Knock, 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 always 3. Never more, never less. I started digging into the history of the courthouse, found old articles in the Reading Library archives. In 1881, a man named Samuel Rose was convicted of killing a storekeeper in Shasta. They hanged him behind the courthouse. But the evidence was flimsy. No witnesses, just a knife found near his house. After the execution, another man confessed on his deathbed. Samuel Rose had been innocent. The last thing Rose did, according to the papers, was pound 3 times on the wall of his cell before they dragged him to the gallows. Witnesses thought it was some kind of protest, a final gesture of defiance. Now I think it was something else. A message. A warning. I've heard the knocks 3 times in my apartment this week. They're getting louder. If you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I can't sleep anymore. Because I know what's coming. I know one night the knocks won't stop at 3. And when the 4th one comes, I don't think I'll be here to tell you what it means.